Hello and welcome to Synergy 365. Hope you had an amazing day. Yesterday, I was looking back through the video yesterday. I was dragging and I apologize. But I guess that's just what it is. Like some days, if you're going to do this every day of the year, some days it's rough, it's tired and just my, level of enthusiasm wasn't really just where it needed to be. All right. So I apologize for that. But today I want to talk about the nature of the CEO CFO relationship. I've had this idea for a series on my channel for a while. But again, one of the reasons why I'm doing this is because I was waiting for the right video treatment. I had like graphics and all this other stuff. And I just need to get these. I just wanted to this year, just get some of these ideas out of my head and, record it just to see if any of this resonates with anyone without maybe some of the fancy video editing that may draw people in. Okay. So let's back into this. One, as I'm going through this conversation, one of the things I said at the beginning of this video series is that I am trying to seek connection, meaning I'm not trying to put anybody off by some of my observations or any of those things. These are just some of the things I've noticed that worked for these relationships over the last 20 years of my career, observing CEOs and CFOs as an examiner, seeing CEOs and CFOs on the way up, meaning riding on high times, everybody making good money and things of that nature. And then I've seen things when things begin to sour. I've seen CEOs and CFOs during boom markets. I've seen them during the bust. And I've seen how different types of CEOs and how different types of CFOs interact. And I want to kind of just distill some points because this is important because we're coming out of a year in 2023 where we saw an uptick in DORs, in liquidity and interest rate risk. And we saw an uptick in downgrades in overall CAMEL ratings for our institutions per the NCUA's recent disclosures. Okay, so let's just talk about, I think it's important to understand the types of CEOs and types of CFOs before we get into the bigger conversation. You have CEOs that come out of the accounting and finance ranks side of the org chart. Okay. They're ex-accountants, they're CFOs, and they end up becoming a CEO. All right. They've been on that side the most of their career. And so they heavily rely on the chief lending officer to handle that side of the business. You have some CEOs that are lenders by pedigree and came up on the lending side, either on the commercial side or either on the consumer side, and they heavily rely on the CFO. Okay. You have some CEOs that come up in technology. I think technology CEOs make really good CEOs, and they have to rely heavily on their lender and their CFO because it just wasn't what they experienced in their career. You have some HR CEOs, you have some operations CEOs. They have a couple of marketing officer CEOs around as well. Okay. But again, you don't have to be everything to be a CEO. You have to know a little bit, but you rely on your senior management team. Okay. So let's just put that to the side. On the CFO side, you have CFOs that come in different persuasions. Like you have accountant, comptroller like CFOs that, they came up in accounting. Everything's going to reconcile quite nicely. Dot's I's, very detail orientated. That's one type. And then you have like finance kind of CFOs where they didn't come up necessarily in accounting, but they're that person that's going to be more comfortable with maybe doing some swaps, some derivatives, very more complicated liquidity interest rate risk strategies because they came up in that way as well. So, and then also on the CFO side, you have ex-CPA firm CFOs that were raised in a CPA firm culture, and they have a particular way of behaving when they get inside of an organization as well, versus CFOs that come up through the ranks in a financial institution setting. All right. So those are the different types of CEOs that I've come across. All right. Now, what are some of the ways in which they interact? And this is just some key points. All right. And so I just took some notes here. If you're a CFO, okay, and you're dealing with your CEO, you have a sense of what they understand and what they don't understand. Okay. You want to make sure that whether or not when you're presenting a strategy that you're giving them all their options, not just the options that you want to see implemented because of your experience and your particular biases. Meaning I see a lot of times, especially around budgeting time, within the budget, there are a lot of assumptions being made about the budget that is just somebody just pulled out of the sky. And I think in terms of that interaction, there should be a relationship between those two individuals where the CEO feels comfortable challenging the assumptions and the presumptions that are being made by their CFO. Hey, why are we assuming this? And why are we assuming that? And where do we get that from? Like there shouldn't be this situation where you're just like, oh, I trust you. Yes, there's trust. I get that. But there should also be understanding, okay, about the risks that we're accepting. Because that gets me to point number 2, is making sure as a CEO that your risk appetite as a CEO and your board's risk appetite is being distilled through the decisions that CFO is making, whether it be around the investments that we're choosing, the liquidity strategies that we're choosing. Because, for example, I ran into this recently where there was a CFO that just because of their own risk appetite, we told everybody that we had to told the group that they had to stop lending because we're about to have a loan to share ratio of 80%. What do you mean we got to stop lending? Well, we about to go outside policy. Okay, let's go to the board. We see the CLO is doing their job. We got a lot of demand. What are our options? We can go to the board and say, hey, board, business is booming. Can we go above 80%? But here's the question. Mr. CFO, if we go above 80 and our liquidity, the quantity of liquidity risk goes up, do you and your team have the requisite knowledge, skills, and ability to manage that quantity of liquidity risk as evidenced by having an amazing contingency funding plan, being able to communicate your sources and uses, all the things, all the accoutrements that go with managing higher interest rate risk and liquidity risk. Those are the conversations some of those conversations that we should be having, because on the back end now that you have a lot of credit unions that are having to rebalance their investment portfolios and they're taking large losses because of it, and it's impacting institutions' capital. We need to look back. We're looking back through these ALCO minutes and like, how did we get here? Who made, when we decided to take our average life of our investment portfolio out over 7 years, how did we make that decision? And whose risk appetite did we make that decision against? Okay. Last little tidbit, CFOs, and this is just an aside, when you're doing this rebalancing of your portfolio, make sure that you're getting multiple bids from multiple firms, not just the firm that took you out to get a steak. Meaning you're not shopping the bid spread and trying to save the credit union money because you have a relationship with a firm or because they called on you more. You're going to give away thousands of dollars because they were nice to you, or are you going to go out and get multiple bids so that you can compare? Just an aside. Okay. And so, on the CEO side, in terms of your relationship with your CFO, let's back up. When you're hiring for a CFO, you want to ask them, are they have an accounting brain, or are they more of a forward-looking kind of CFO? They got some CFOs that only know how to correctly record past transactions, and they do that amazingly. They're gonna dot the I, dot the T's. But then you have some CFOs that do that, and they also know how to model out all of your ideas and come back to you and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. CEO, I understand we want to have these different strategic options. Here's option one that has a particular risk associated. Here's another option. And they give you your options so that you can make the best decision possible under your administration. And they put these, hey, Mr. CFO, these are all your options. Here's all these potential outcomes. Here they are. And that's what you really want from your CFO. Another big thing about CFOs is this too. I see some org charts where I would say, I don't know, is it cost savings, but there's an org chart structure where all things that usually report directly to the CEO, they're reporting to the CFO. And this is what can happen when that happens. Imagine you have an HR person reporting up to the CFO. You have your marketing person reporting up to the CFO. So you're here as the CEO. Your HR person is saying, we need help in these areas because managers are telling me they're short-staffed and things of that nature. Your marketing person is saying, hey, you want me to get this membership growth, but I'm having to communicate with a person that's only focused on dollars and cents. And if I go around that person, I'm insubordinate because on this org chart, they're my boss. That's one thing that I see happening a lot, in that some senior managers, because they have to go through a very dollars and cents minded person who's perhaps very risk adverse, they're not getting the budget they need to achieve the organization's strategic goals. So that's just some of the general thoughts. I want to kind of do this a little bit more where I talk about the relationship between the CEO and the chief lending officer, the relationship between the CEO and the HR personnel, so that we can go through these dynamics, because at some level, everybody is good at what they do. They're competent. And what really affects things is relationships, and how healthy those relationships are, and how well groups can communicate among one another. Hopefully this was helpful. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.